So thank you for coming. My name's Jeremy Boorer. I look after the Middle East and Africa for Entrust. My presentation today a bit similar to the previous one in terms of it's around convergence of physical and logical access. However, before I do that, you might be interested to hear a bit about who we are. So we're a Canadian software company formed in 1997 in Ottawa in Canada. We were formed out of Nortel Networks. And the purpose of our company at that time was to take, in some respects, a dirty word, public key infrastructure to the market. So we were the first company to provide digital certificates for encryption, strong authentication, and digital signatures as a product that you could actually buy. So for the last 14 years, that's been our core technology, and then we've built applications that exploit that. So we're known for that sort of technology: encryption, digital certificates, strong authentication, etc., etc. We have 4,000 companies around the world that use our technologies in various forms. In this region, the ones of interest are the security element of the Saudi National ID card. That was a project from 2006. We have the Emirates ID Authority security element on the new ID card that's coming out this year. And we also have the Smart Card project in Qatar, again since 2006. They are just about to increase their infrastructure around the use of that card. But just to be clear, we are the security element of that Smart Card. We're also one of the largest, or the largest supplier of the security element of electronic passports on the planet. So there are 400 million electronic passports out there at the moment, and we secure in one way or another half of them. So by that I mean on, for example, the UK passport, the chip on this UK passport has my photograph. We sign that element that goes on to that chip. We also do the verification of the passport to the reader and the trust that goes back between the passport booklet, the reader, and the issuing country. So that's the sort of area that we are involved in. For this particular presentation, though, this is more around the convergence of physical and logical access. So these are the sorts of questions that we ask people when we go and talk to them about this sort of technology. Who here uses second factor authentication? Lots of companies are now using that for their customers. If you turn to your employees, though, do you have an ID card that they might use to access the building? And usually, in larger companies, they will have such a thing. If they have either or both of these, does the same card for the employees allow them to access applications? And often, that isn't the case. Often they will have an ID badge to get into a building, but then their username and password to access applications, maybe a token of some sort, questions and answers, but never usually will companies have an ID badge that will also, apart from getting them into the building through the door locks, access applications that they want to have internally. And that is where, as the previous presentation was about, and as lots of companies here are talking about, is where, if you like, the future is heading in terms of authentication. Providing a single infrastructure to enable you to provide second factor authentication to applications, internally or externally, and then physical access to the buildings or the premises that you're actually providing for your employees. So there's a lot of attacks that are going on at the moment. If you notice this section here, this is from an organization that tracks breaches. So, you know, networks being attacked, the Sony PlayStation incidents, RSA incidents and things like that. And they actually track these sorts of things that are going on. And I don't know if you can see here, this is this week. This isn't like over a long period of time. These incidents have happened this week. 701,000 IDs taken from Hewlett-Packard. That's one of the largest that's ever actually happened in an organization such as that. And there are others. And these are going on constantly. Information is being taken constantly through breaches, through phishing, through whatever it happens to be. And big companies are suffering, HP being one. It's taken down certain companies in our industry. You might have heard of a company called DigiNotar. They got wiped out by a breach that happened to them. So these are significant things that are happening all the time. So that's logical attacks. Then you also have physical. So this is where people are getting access to things that they shouldn't have in a building, for example, taking laptops, you know, those sorts of attacks that are going on. And again, they're happening all the time. Some of these are sort of insignificant because, you know, you might lose a laptop or two or whatever. But some of these can be very important and can actually affect companies very severely. So this was one company called Heartland. They had 130 million records stolen. So that is information about their patients and other things that are going on. I think they've only been surpassed by the Tokyo Railway that I think has had 170 million records stolen. Okay, that's data, it's been taken. In North America, there is legislation that forces companies to publicly announce these sorts of things that are going on. There's one called California 1386. It actually mandates that you have to make these breaches public. So because of things like that, this is what actually happened to Heartland in terms of share price. They had a $68 million settlement and other costs that they had to go through as a direct consequence of them being breached. So these can be very important. As I said, a company called DigiNotar actually ceased trading. They were wiped out because of it. So they are important things that you have to be thinking about. So what we're sort of saying is that, you know, at the moment you have two distinct areas of access control. You have the logical ones, so accessing applications, and then you have the physical ones, accessing the buildings that people are going into. Obviously, in the logical side, that might be customers accessing applications, online banking, any sort of other online sort of activity. And then also, you have employees accessing those applications too. On the physical side, you're talking more about employees, maybe contractors, etc., etc. But of course, ideally, you would have one solution that would fix both. Okay? So just a bit about physical access. We are not a physical access company, and we're not suggesting that you have to change anything around the physical access solution. But essentially, they are old systems. Some of the places I go, it's very old technology. The card is very simple. It just has on it a serial number. Inside that card, if there's a chip at all, it will just have a serial number. Nothing really sophisticated. They're usually standalone systems. They're not integrated with anything else. They have their own database, etc., etc. And of course, you have the physical access people in charge of it. You might have an actual security officer for physical buildings, etc., etc., and then an IT security guy for logical access. And they don't often meet. So ideally, what we're saying is you will take this combined logical access credentials and your physical access credentials and come out with a solution that gives you both, a bit like the previous speaker was talking about. Of course, you do have considerations to make. Costs. One of the benefits out of converging a physical access solution and a logical one is that you can produce a single system, and therefore the implementation effort and the convergence of that will actually be more cost effective. Security in itself. So if you could say, for example, if this person is not in the building, how can they actually access this application? You're making yourself more secure. Also with user experience, making things simple. So we have solutions now that can enable you to access a building using your phone. That phone can access an application on your PC through NFC, through Bluetooth, and it will give you user convenience. So we have many products in our portfolio, probably about 40 in total, but this is the platform that gives us the convergence and the combined physical and logical access solution called Identity Guard. It's been around for 7 years. It originally came out for logical access control. So this was second factor, and one of the benefits if you're just looking at logical access control is it gives you a suite of authentication options. So lots of people are talking about, you know, a platform for delivering many authentication choices. There's technical and commercial reasons for choosing us over other people. In this region we have some of the largest banks, Samba, NCB. They have standardized on this sort of technology for all of their second factor authentication for their consumers. So online banking, they will give different sort of token or questions and answers, SMS, soft tokens. You get all of these choices within the platform. Okay, and you literally can mix and match them in any way you choose. You buy a license, and you could say, for some people, I am using a token. For other people, I'm using a digital certificate. For other people, I'm using a grid card, SMS. For all of them, you might check where they're logging in from and validating that they might be logging in from within inside the country, outside the country, inside the office, outside the office. All of those sorts of abilities are provided to you on one platform for second factor authentication to applications. As I say, it's been around for 7 years or so. There are 50 million users of this product worldwide, and it's a very flexible product. As I said, these are the choices that you get, and you combine them however you wish. It also supports, as mobile seems to be the future, it also supports many choices for mobile-based authentication in its own right. So again, from a logical access perspective. So you could have an application. So again, you can go onto iTunes, you could search for Entrust, you will find our soft token that you can freely download. NCB in Saudi have also put a token up there that is downloadable by all their customers, and that gives them an online banking app on their mobile phone. But we provide additional security around those sorts of applications. Okay, so if you are deploying an app on a mobile phone, which everyone seems to be doing these days, we can give you security around that application. One of the most important ones is around the certificate. So, as I said, the real security in any ID card, we would argue, is the security inside the card. Anything visible, even on passports, ID cards, anything that you can see is likely to be reproducible. If you turn up at a border with a passport and your chip on your passport has been tampered with, it will force secondary inspection. That's the rules, if you like. So you cannot get away with mucking about with the chip on a passport. What secures the chip on a passport? It's a certificate. Okay, and that's, as I say, our heritage. That's what we do. So we would argue that for cards where you're putting things inside, whether that be information, fingerprints, biometrics, whatever it happens to be, that data should be secured in addition to what it already is secured by, a certificate. Okay, so it can't be modified, altered, etc. When you're talking about online mobile applications, rather, we would also argue that the best security around those applications on mobile devices is to use a certificate. Okay, so that's just one of the other options that we provide for mobile devices. We can also deploy those certificates over the air if that's the way you want to do it. One of the other options that you get within Identity Guard is the ability to enforce second factor to applications outside your organization. So, for example, we use a product called Salesforce, which is a cloud service hosted and run by Salesforce themselves. We would like to have our credential inside our organization be used as the second factor credential to a third party's hosted solution. So you can take your employee identifier and impose that security onto a third party in the cloud. Identity Guard can also do that. So you could have your employee ID as the second factor authentication to a third party's application through something called the federation model. So, as I said, Identity Guard for logical access has been around since 2005, and it provides these second factor authentication choices. On the physical access side, the same platform, and that's one of the key points, can also give you access to buildings, locations, etc., etc. Okay, so you just have to deploy a server once. You can use second factor for all your customers, contractors, employees accessing VPN applications, Outlook Web Access, and then you can deploy the second half of Identity Guard, if you like, which will allow you to enroll users with an ID badge or a USB token that gives them a credential that then allows them to log on to their laptop through an ID badge, a USB token, smart card login to Windows, but also get into the building in the first place. Okay, so the way we do that is that there are some extra modules that you add on to our product. One's called the enrollment module, and what that does is it gives you the ability to capture employee or other people's information. That could be using a web camera to take the photograph. It could be using a third-party capture tower that allows you to take their fingerprints, signatures. It might be an ICAO-approved camera that will meet the requirements of a travel document. Okay, so this particular module here is all around getting the users into the system in the first place. It can be as simple or as sophisticated as you choose. A straight webcam is the lowest option, I guess, if you want a photograph, up to, as I say, ICAO-compliant capture. So that module will then get them into our solution. The print module, as it's called, then allows that information to be put onto the elements that you want to store their information on. By default, that might be an ID card. Okay, so you can take the information captured from the enrollment module, ultimately produce an ID card with a photo on it, with a digital credential inside, and that element will actually do that. The print module is also used for maybe a slight stretch of the word print module, but it is also to deploy that sort of information to mobile devices as well. So you can send out credential information to mobile phones over the air, still using this same element. Okay, so you can enroll people, and then you can deploy their ID to any sort of form factor, mobile device, laptop, ID card, USB token, etc., etc. This element of Identity Guard that deals with physical access also does obviously things around user administration. So, for example, if they forget the PIN for their USB token, they can go through an element and then select, oh, reset PIN. If they want to request a new credential, they can do that. It provides the design of how the card's going to look. So there's a graphical interface for that. And because now lots of people are using mobile devices, it also allows integration with mobile device management solutions as well. So good technologies and people like that. And the other thing that it does is it also provides integration with the physical access control system itself. So we're not suggesting that you change the physical access control system. We are really suggesting that you enhance the card element of it, or move away from a card element to a mobile device, and that becomes your ID for getting through the door locks, which we leave alone. We just integrate with it through some middleware that says if you take them out of Identity Guard, they get taken out of the physical access control system at the same time. Okay, so Identity Guard becomes, if you like, the gatekeeper of access to all logical applications, and then it can control access through physical applications as well. So I think I've covered that. So just to make clear around if cards is the way to go, as I said, we're not talking about changing the physical access system that they have. We are merely going to replicate the particular element of the current physical access system that they have. So that might be a certain antenna, It might be a certain applet, maybe a DesFar applet or MyFair applet. We're going to keep that element because you don't want to start saying to people you've got to rip out your existing infrastructure. Okay, so a lot of these cards, as you might know, aren't very secure. You can clone ID badges remotely by technology you can put in a briefcase. You can get within a meter of some card technology and you can just clone it over the air. And we've shown people that you can do that. So a lot of these older systems are very insecure in their own self. So we would replicate whatever that existing element is, and then we would add either additional chip, additional antenna, add on some of our own applet, which would be the security applet that might hold a digital certificate. And if you realize that once you get into this realm, you're getting into the ability to do three things. Digital certificates give you digital signature. That allows you to move manual processes that are signed with a pen and paper to electronic processes signed digitally. So you get the benefits of electronic processes, cost reduction, etc., etc. You get a signature that will still stand up in court if you have digital signature laws in your country. You also then get the ability to do encryption. So taking data, not being intercepted, etc., etc. And then you get strong authentication as well, using a digital certificate to do that. Okay, and as I said right at the beginning, we're sort of like the world's leading supplier of that sort of technology. So once you're into those three things, encryption and digital signatures and strong authentication, you can start building applications around, for example, secure email. So you could then start sending email securely that won't be intercepted as it's going out on the internet. You could send emails that are signed so that if you get them to a third party, you know that they haven't been tampered with. That could give you PCI compliance if that's something that you wanted to look at. It could give you compliance with other regulations that are imposed upon you either by governments or by your own policies. So once you get into that area, you are increasing your security across a whole range of applications, not just physical access. So as an example of this is like the proof of everything I've just said. So 2 years ago, Interpol came to us and they actually wanted a card that would give them visa waiver into certain countries, or all countries ultimately, but certain ones at the time. So as you know, Interpol, the world's police force, they have to react really quickly to events that happen, terrorism, they go to G20 summits, World Cups, and they are there helping out the local police for whatever reason. But they wanted a travel document. Okay, so they wanted something that they could use to react quickly to these events. If something happens, they don't want to then say, oh, I've got to wait 2 weeks for a visa. They have their own passports, but they want to have something that allows them to just turn up quickly, show their passport, here's their visa, it's been pre-validated if you like, and they can just come into the country. So that was their first requirement. So border access. It also gave them virtual borders. So now they could say with handheld readers, they could take the same cards, they could deploy agents in, say, a G20 summit, they could give them a handheld reader. It would use the same technology, which is called basic access control and extended access control, which is the same system that gives passport access to countries. They could push that out as a virtual border wherever they chose, if they had a handheld reader. Handheld readers these days can be as simple as an application running on an NFC phone. It doesn't have to be a big handheld, you know, that costs $5,000. We have applets that will run on a mobile phone that will read through NFC, a BAC, as in a passport approved ID. So that was their first requirement, border access. They now can use this card in 39 countries. It's been pre-approved between Interpol and that country. They can turn up, show this card and their passport. That's all they have to do. The next one was, they're based out of Lyon, so in France. They wanted a physical access card to get them into their building in Lyon. So the same card, ideally, that will give them that access control. Again, we didn't touch their existing door locks. We integrated the technology onto the card. The next one was, well, if you're doing that, you can then do smart card authentication to your computer. So smart card login. In their particular scenario, this is a contact chip, but it could be contactless, it could be NFC. So as long as they have smart card readers in their computer, the same card, it's got them into the country, it's got them into the building, same card can now get them into their laptop. That then gave them also the ability to do VPN access if they were remote, because on this card is a digital certificate. They configure their VPN to support certificate authentication. We supplied the certificate along with the card, gives them strong authentication onto the computer, gives them secure email, gives them strong authentication onto the VPN device. Then also, just for good measure, they also wanted second factor for when they weren't in their office. So one of the technologies that we do within our platform is called a grid. And a grid is, you might be able to see it there, it's a random set of numbers and letters that are challenged, you know, what is coordinate A1, B3, C4, they enter whatever the coordinate is. So it's an OTP in a low-cost form. They then have a PIN that protects anyone taking this and using it. Okay? So that is for when they're not in a secure location. So if they're not connected to their laptops at work through VPN, or they're in an internet cafe and they still want to get onto Outlook Web Access or an application, an INTERPOL application, they can use a grid as their second factor. So something stronger than username and password. It's got a very high entropy, much stronger than a token, in fact. But it gives them that added level of assurance that when they're not in a secured environment, they can still access these applications. So this is a liner. More recently, because of the explosion in mobile applications and NFC phones and things like that, we've now taken the same principle and then applied it to mobile devices. So now what you can do is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but obviously with a USB stick, it's sometimes more usable than a smart card because you don't need drivers, etc., etc. You can now have USB sticks that are also able to open doors. So they're a USB form factor, but you can open doors with them. So we can, in fact, do that. But more recently, the idea is to move this technology to mobile phones. So NFC is the way to go there. So we can now deploy applets to mobile phones that still give you the credential, but if you have NFC, and your physical access system supports it, so it would be one of these, you could now turn up at a building, hold your phone to the door, and that gets you into the building. So we can deploy all the security and the applications around that do that. And then, if you wanted to, you could then enable Bluetooth and use Bluetooth to get you on and off your laptop, or NFC. Obviously, there's pros and cons of both. NFC is very near. It's a couple of centimeters. Bluetooth is 10 meters or more. So you can actually enable NFC, get into the building. If your machine is capable of supporting NFC, just have your phone near the device. It will log you on. You just enter your PIN. Now you've got the ability to access the certificate on that machine, do secure email, etc., etc. If you don't have NFC capability on your machine, you could swap it to Bluetooth. Just have it near the machine, enter your PIN, you've got in, it's now got access to your certificate to do secure email, VPN access, etc., etc. And then as soon as you walk away, either a few centimeters in NFC or a few meters in Bluetooth, it logs you off. When you leave the building, etc., etc. So a lot of that, or some of that, will require integration. So we integrate with, you know, as I say, the product's been around for many years. It will integrate with all the infrastructure that you might have at the moment. As I said, it also can integrate with MDM suppliers for mobile device management. It can integrate with the back-end PAX systems for that element so that you could take them out of Identity Guard, take them out of the physical access, and then all the applications that you might require for second factor authentication, all of those will be integrated as well. So really, just in summary, it's a mature product. It's been around for a long time. Many users. Any vertical. It's not tied to verticals specifically. We have, you know, Dubai as a customer. We have Ministry of Interior as a customer, etc., etc. Lots of banks. So it is just a product that gives you those sorts of features. It's won awards. SC Magazine gives it a best buy almost every year for flexibility, cost, value, etc., etc. That's it. Any questions? Thank you.